Welcome back. Well, let's continue the conversations then. You saw just a moment ago the Electricity Minister, Newzroom Afrika, celebrating 200 days of no load shedding. Chris Yelland, the head of EE Publishers. Chris, good afternoon to you. I mean, we probably do need to start giving credit where credit is due. 200 days of no load shedding, considering where we were last year, is probably quite an important achievement.
It is indeed, and I think the Minister today, this morning at the media briefing, was at pains to point out the various players that have been involved in this achievement. Firstly, of course, the President himself for identifying the crisis, for consulting widely. It took a long time, but he finally produced this emergency energy plan, which he put into place and got things going. I think the first thing that he did was to appoint a Minister of Electricity dedicated to ending load shedding. And that was the Minister of Electricity. And as you know, his success, he has been rewarded for his success politically, and his role has been expanded to be the Minister of Electricity and Energy. So I think the President and the Minister have played an important part. But of course, the first thing that the Minister did and the President was to set up the National Energy Crisis Committee, comprising a number of different ministries and industry stakeholders, work streams, helped also by business and industry, and it has really borne fruit with the hard work. The first on the list was, of course, to fix Eskom, and a lot of work has been done in that regard, and all credit to the new head of Eskom Generation, the new CEO of Eskom, the new board of Eskom, have really done more than one expected of them, or put it this way, the results have been more than one anticipated. And of course, it extends, to further to, engagements with labor, to ensure that labor are on board, on the floor in the power stations, also engagements with the private sector, with business, and all of this, has borne fruit. In addition to, of course, helped by a fairly weak economy and a low demand for electricity, ever rising prices of electricity, which has made the business case for alternative energy better and better. And this has delivered a very significant amount of new generation capacity to the grid. All of this has helped. This is not a single factor. This is not a one-person, result. And I think the Minister was at pains to, point all of this out and to thank the various people involved.
Is there any cost we're going to pay for this later? In other words, and we've seen in the past that coal-fired power stations can be run too hard. They can be run too hard to achieve certain political goals, if you like. I can be very cynical for a moment. That's not what's happening now, right? Something fundamentally has changed. We're not living now and paying later.
Well, we are paying. We're paying an extra price for maintenance, and in that regard, Treasury has come to the table and has relieved Eskom of some of its debt burden. This has helped their cash flow and given them the resources to spend on additional maintenance, on spares, on contracting with original equipment manufacturers. So, of course, there's always a price to be paid, but it's a price that delivers value for money, because the cost of not sorting this matter out is far higher than the cost of sorting it out. In terms of running plant hard, well, look, the plant we know is old. A lot of work is going into extending its performance, improving its performance, and delaying the shutdown. But from 2030, there will be shutdowns of these old power stations. But this has given some breathing space to really push hard on the other alternative energy sources, which really is wind and solar PV and battery energy storage and gas to power. There is no new coal-fired power on the cards. There is talk about new nuclear, but that's a long-term 15-year sort of project. But in the interim, it's wind and solar PV and battery energy storage, pumped water storage, and gas to power. Those are the new generation, which needs to come on, to replace as the old power stations are decommissioned from 2030 onwards.
Chris, is there ever going to be a moment where we can say we won't have load shedding again? And I realize it would be a very brave politician well, maybe not a brave politician, but certainly a brave electricity expert or a brave Eskom CEO who would say that, you would probably only say that the chances of load shedding have dramatically reduced, which is much more boring than saying we'll never have load shedding again.
We should never have load shedding again. I'm going to say it because that is the norm. Countries around the world have solved these problems. There are only a very few countries in the world that have had the kind of load shedding that we've had. There's no reason why South Africa should be in this position. And I want to just, I asked the minister the question at the media briefing today. Now that load shedding has been brought under control, and the intensity has just disappeared for the last 200 days, is it not time now to actually officially call an end to the emergency Karpowership project procurements? And I asked this question of the minister, and his answer was very revealing, and I think reflects the confidence that he has going forward. He said, and I'm quoting him verbatim here, "The Karpowership projects are dead in the water. Sure. We have already announced that the projects did not meet the deadline dates. The projects are buried and behind us." And I think that kind of putting an end to these long-term emergency procurements is a sign that we can and will resolve these problems. I have the confidence that the minister and Eskom and all the stakeholders in the country, the IPPs and the whole industry can put this behind us once and for all.
So, Chris, having no load shedding is incredibly important for many, many people. It's very important for the economy, and the formal economy relies on power generated mostly in the end by Eskom. But for millions of people, they're also still living under load reduction. They're switched off for hours every day regularly, usually people in township areas, some rural areas, and that's because the networks around them cannot take the load. You know all of this better than I do, Chris. I actually don't know if we even have a figure of how many South Africans are living under load reduction, but it's certainly in the millions. I mean, what, between 5 and 10 million maybe?
Well, this has emerged as the next problem. As one solves one problem, and we kind of are solving and really doing well in the generation sector, the attention then turns to the next issues that need to be resolved. The first one after the generation is the transmission grid, which is suffering constraints and delaying new generation capacity from coming on stream. A lot of attention has been given to this, and I think although a lot of work has to be done in delivering these projects, we at least know what we have to do. Put it this way, Eskom and the National Transmission Grid Company of South Africa and the powers that be in the energy sector, I think they know what has to be done. Of course, it still has to be done. But the real emerging issue, where I don't think we got a clue yet as to what has to be done, is the question of the distribution network. And that's where we're experiencing this so-called load reduction. It's caused by overloading of the distribution networks. And a lot of this is associated with high levels of theft and non-payment of electricity, uncontrolled electricity use, leading to overloading of the infrastructure. And if you let it carry on being overloaded, you have transformer failures and transformers catching fire, and we've seen all of this. So to deal with this, Eskom, switches off the distribution infrastructure on those areas of the grid, the network that are being overloaded during
Chris
the peak
Yelland,
periods, which is the times where they get overloaded.
Chris Yelland, I'm so sorry, we are going to have to leave that there. Chris Yelland, of course, is from EE Publishers. For Keelan Balula, the ANC Secretary General.